Hello everybody, it's Patty and I'm doing another Q&A on Sunday evening. Again, I'm a little early tonight, but I'm early this evening because I really can't stay all evening. I was in a little bit of an accident and I fell and hit my head. It's really icy where I am right now, and I've had just, with trauma, you get the pain, the inflammation, all of that. And my entire neck has been sore. Of course, I don't take any pain relieving medication or anything to suppress the pain. The pain is there to tell me that something's going on. And I've done hot cold packs, so that's one of the therapies we recommend to clients that are dealing with pain, especially those that are dealing with a lot of congestion. Hot and cold therapy. You always start and end with a cold pack, and that's what I've done, and then I kind of alternate that with a hot pack. So I've been doing the hot-cold therapy to help, and so yeah, when I fell, just to kind of give you the background story, I woke up this morning and I have two dogs, and we don't have television service at our house. We have given up the news, given up TV, and the downside of that is you don't know what the weather's like, especially in the Midwest when the weather changes all of the time. So to make a long story short, I had no idea it was going to be really icy in my backyard when I woke up this morning, and I was letting the dogs out. My little puppy, he's just one, he wanted to play ball, so I got his little throwing stick, or that little chuck it thing to throw the ball really far. And I walked out on the landing, which was concrete. Well, I guess there was a little pad there. And my feet just fell from underneath me and my head fell backwards and I hit the back of my head. My head ricocheted back, and I didn't bleed or anything, but there is definitely a knot on my head, and yeah, my head is sore, my neck is sore. So I thought I'd share with you one little thing that I do for pain, and this really is helpful for any kind of pain, whether it's just your simple headache, your detox headache. So that's something if people are going through detoxification, especially if they're withdrawing from things like caffeine, it's not uncommon to have these detox headaches as things are clearing out of our body. And it's helpful to let your clients know there are things that you can do to help mitigate the pain. So this is one of the things I like to do, and I just thought I would do it live on air. So it's using essential oils, and so a good essential oil for helping with pain is peppermint oil. And I'm not necessarily recommending this brand. This is just the brand that I have. I'm sure there's lots of good brands out there for essential oils. And then you want to use a carrier oil. I go through carrier oil so much, and this is what I'm left with. So I've got grapeseed oil, but it is a carrier oil. You never, if you're applying essential oils onto the skin, always use a carrier oil, as these can burn quite a bit. So all I'm going to do here is put just a little dab. Let me make sure this is open first. Okay, this is open. So I'm just going to put a little dab of the carrier oil onto the palm of my hand, if it'll come out. Am I out of this stuff? No. Okay, so just a little coin-sized dab. Hope you guys can't even see it. And then I just add the essential oil to that. And then I kind of let it mix around. That's the puppy that I was throwing the ball for when I was about to, when I fell. I put on Facebook that I fell outside and then I found dog, because when I looked up, there was my puppy looking down on me. And he looked very majestic with the sun behind him and the ball in his mouth, wondering what the hell am I doing laying on the ground when I should be throwing the ball. Okay, so I'm just going to put a little bit of this on my temples and back, kind of where the pain is being felt. And what peppermint oil does is that it helps to kind of dilate and expand the tissues, really helping to draw in the energy to release the pain. You know, I'm not being really scientific about that at all, but that's kind of how I feel it. Peppermint oil is also great, like if you're in the bathtub, always again in the bath water, use a carrier oil. And it's just really expansive. And I find that it's nice as a pain reliever because it kind of and be careful, you know, around your eyes, but like on the temples, massaging it into your scalp a little bit. And I'm already feeling kind of that the pain is starting to subside just as I apply this topically onto my head. So I've been kind of laying around a lot today, not really feeling like doing much, but that's important when you're not feeling well, is to rest and let the body recuperate. I do find though when, you know, you rest too much and you're not moving your body, things start to become stagnant. So motion is good, moving the legs around, good. Even if you can get up and do a little bit of walking or even like some deep breathing, that's very beneficial. So I'm going to try to put some of this back, this oil with the essential oil in it. Now I have it all over my hand. Okay, so live Q&A, this is the 4th week. I can't stay very late though tonight because my head hurts. Well, it feels a little bit better right now. I had one question, I think somebody posted onto my Facebook page about colon pH. And, you know, the pH in the gastrointestinal tract changes. So as we move from organ to organ, the pH in that organ of the digestive tract will change. It's very close to being neutral in most organs, but in the stomach, obviously, it drops down. So especially when the stomach is actively digesting proteins, the higher the protein content in the stomach, the more hydrochloric acid is released from the parietal cells, and that hydrochloric acid will lower the pH of the stomach, which is good because when we ingest proteins, it's important that the proteins denature, that they unfold, and that is helpful to help break the peptide bonds within that protein. But also, the hydrochloric acid activates the molecule called pepsinogen into its active form, which is called pepsin, and pepsin is the protein digesting enzyme. So in the stomach, our pH, especially when we're digesting any meal that has a protein content, you're going to have a lower pH. pH can vary though. So when the stomach's empty, the pH becomes slightly more alkaline. But elsewhere in the digestive tract, it's very close to 7. In the duodenum, the first part of the small intestine, the pH does go up a little bit. The pancreas does secrete bicarbonate, which helps to raise the pH within the digestive juices entering into the small intestine from the stomach. And that's important as well. It's important that that pH be 7 or higher because that's the pH that the enzymes in the duodenum work best at. So those enzymes include things like pancreatic amylase, pancreatic lipase. We also have some zymogens there. Hi, Sarah. And they're going to help to break down the food molecules that have left the stomach and that are now entering into the small intestine. So we become more alkaline in the small intestine, but the specific question I had was about the pH, I believe, in the large intestine, in the colon. And, you know, the pH in the colon, it also kind of in the more distal regions of the small intestine, meaning that you're going further away, the pH can vary again quite a bit. You know, I did my dissertation for my naturopathic degree on digestive enzymes. I wrote the thing in a week. It really wasn't that much to talk home about, but you know, the pH varies quite a bit in the large intestine. There's really no digestion going on in the large intestine. All of that has to be completed in the small intestine. So having a wider pH range in the large intestine is okay because we're not digesting. Really all we're doing is in the large intestine absorbing a lot of water, out of the chyme, which is solidifying it into feces. And we're also, yeah, that's the main thing going on in the large intestine. Now, in the large intestine, like in the small intestine, we do have some beneficial bacteria. So, they begin to adapt to the appropriate pH environment. But it can vary greatly in the large intestine. I've seen pHs as low as 4 in the large intestine, all the way up to closer to 7 or 8. So why does it vary so much? I'm sure that has a lot to do with diet. It also probably has a lot to do with how much waste product is impacted on the colon wall. So, many of us that don't eliminate appropriately, especially with lower fiber diets, processed foods, waste products accumulate on the inside of the colon wall and they get stuck there. And that's really dangerous. I mean, the reason why fruits and vegetables are so healthy in preventing a lot of chronic disorders is that because the colon wall, when it becomes impacted with this fecal material, it can trap waste products, especially the metabolic waste products that are being produced by the cells lining the colon wall. And so when those waste products start to accumulate behind that impacted fecal material, those wastes then start to acidify that tissue, and chronic acidosis leads to, irritation, which progresses into inflammation. And then that inflammation is just like what we say over and over again. When inflammation is not addressed and it continues, it leads to tissue change. So inflammation precedes tissue change. And what does that tissue change look like in the colon? Well, lots of different things. You could get things like ulcers, diverticulitis, polyps, lots of different things. I mean, even the C word, even cancer. So all of that can be prevented with natural living, with cleansing the colon, with cleansing the entire body. I mean, the colon is just one part of all of our organs and tissues, and the colon itself also needs to be lymphatically cleansed. So, doing a good colon cleanse, being on herbal support for the colon, helping to strengthen the colon wall, strengthening things like peristalsis, which is the movement of the smooth muscle, the contraction of that smooth muscle, helping to move things from, down the esophagus all the way down to the rectum, and then releasing that. So that's basically all I have to say about the pH in the colon. I don't know if the question, I don't think I have that question any longer either, but I don't know if the question had anything to do with enemas or colonics. Enemas and colonics, Dr. Morse doesn't really recommend those because they can become a crutch and people can become dependent on those. Do an enema or a colonic, if you have to get things moving, especially if you're like initially starting a detoxification program. As you can see here, my neck is sore. But if you're starting a detoxification program, it might not be a bad idea to start with a nice cleansing action like an enema or a colonic, especially if you're early on and you're coming off of things like coffee. That might give you a little bit of relief, but don't do it all of the time. Help to really strengthen the colon wall with a good herbal formula. Like Dr. Morris has 5 different stomach and bowel formulas. And if you go to his website, and I have it on my website too, but each stomach and bowel formula, 0 through number 5, is for a different stage of how many bowel movements you have daily. So a lot of people get benefit from number 3, from number 4, so you might start at a different number. But this is a good place to begin to strengthen that bowel wall. And then obviously as you start changing to a more healing diet, you will start releasing a lot from the colon wall. One of the best things I have found, though, as far as getting that impacted fecal material off of the large intestinal wall is a grape and lemon fast. I mean, there's nothing that can, I don't know. I find that with my own clients that grapes and lemons just get that mucoid plaque off of the bowel wall. And today I'm wearing a rainbow shirt. My boyfriend got this for me a couple years ago because I like rainbows. And I realized like the last 4 videos that I've made, I've been wearing dark colors, and that's no fun. Today, because my head hurts and my neck hurts because I fell, I thought I'd wear light colors. So again, I'm early, but I can't stay too late tonight. So I'll be here for a little bit of time, but if anybody has any questions, I'm here to respond to them. I thought I might address some of the wonderful questions that the students that are currently in my anatomy and physiology course, what they've been asking. One of my students was asking about fructose metabolism. So fructose is a type of monosaccharide, simple sugar, and it's a sugar we get from our diet. So just a little bit of a review of diet and the different types of sugars that we ingest. We have the carbohydrate family, which includes the sugars. And when we ingest carbohydrate, that could be as a starch, which is a long chain of glucose, is too big to be absorbed into our blood. So we have to break that down into its smallest subunits. There are several enzymes in our body that help us digest starch. So salivary amylase, which I think the old school name is talyn, P-T-A-L-Y-N, I think. The newer books, we now call it salivary amylase. So that begins a starch digestion in the mouth, and that helps to break starch down into a disaccharide called maltose. And then, from the mouth, we move down the esophagus into the stomach. Really no starch digestion or carbohydrate digestion occurring in the stomach. But then after that, we move into the small intestine, and the pancreas secretes into the small intestine pancreatic amylase, which continues the process of breaking down starches into maltose. Now, maltose, being a disaccharide, is still too big to be absorbed into the blood. So like all disaccharides, which are 2 sugars bonded together, it has to be broken down. We have lining the small intestinal wall enzymes that help to break down the disaccharides. And there's 3 different enzymes that are present there. There's maltase, lactase, and sucrase. So maltase is breaking down that maltose, which is just 2 glucose molecules. And it breaks it down into individual glucose molecules, which are then absorbed into the blood. Sucrase breaks down sucrose. Sucrose is your typical cane sugar or your table sugar. That's a fructose and a glucose bonded together covalently. And so sucrase breaks that molecule down, and now we have our fructose and our glucose, and they can then be absorbed into the blood. And then lactase breaks down lactose. Lactose is a disaccharide of glucose and galactose, and then those are absorbed. So, I have to kind of share with everybody what the modern medical textbooks say about what all of those nutrients do after they're absorbed. So these are all called hydrophilic nutrients, meaning that they mix well in water. So they're directly absorbed at the villi of the small intestine into the blood capillaries. The blood capillaries of the small intestine then merge into mesenteric veins, which then merge into the hepatic portal vein. The hepatic portal vein then sends that blood into the liver. And then what the modern medical books are stating that happens is that all of those simple sugars, fructose, glucose, and galactose, are then taken in by the hepatocytes, and that all of the non-glucose molecules, the fructose and the galactose, are converted into glucose. And then, some of that glucose might be stored as glycogen, or it might be converted into other molecules. The liver is this amazing chemical factory. But it is suggested by our modern medical textbooks that the glucose is the only simple sugar released back into the blood in that general systemic circulation. And then we have hormones like insulin that need to be released in order for our body cells to take that glucose out of the blood and use it for energy production. So that's what the modern medical textbooks say. So the student that I had was asking about fructose specifically. Now, fructose is an interesting little sugar. It's fruit sugar. It does not need insulin to be absorbed by the liver. So it goes directly into the liver cells. But does that mean it's not absorbed by any other cell in the body? And I couldn't find any evidence in the research to state that it does not. All I know is that the modern medical books that I have at my disposal are all stating that most of the fructose is converted into glucose, and we don't have any fructose in the systemic circulation. So again, people, we have a lot of research that needs to be added to what Dr. Morse says, and I agree with Dr. Morse. I mean, what Dr. Morse is stating about fructose is that it's a wonderful sugar. You know, it doesn't need insulin. In fact, I did see some literature saying that fructose is wonderful for diabetics because, you know, diabetics who have either an insulin deficiency or their insulin receptors are not working appropriately, that insulin not being present or not working is preventing the glucose from getting into the cells. But the fructose doesn't need insulin, so it goes right on in and it can be used for an energy source. So it's quite beautiful. So fructose, great sugar. You know, fructose gets a bad reputation because of the high fructose corn syrup and all of that nonsense, which is meant to artificially sweeten a lot of our foods. But, you know, when we get back to nature, we get back to the true foods we're supposed to be putting into our body, which is that which is grown from the earth, and it has the beautiful ratios of all of the nutrients. So I've got some questions coming in. Is that Sarinya? I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Are all cooked foods bad for us, or can we have them in a small quantity? Well, when you cook a food, you're denaturing, especially the proteins in that food. So the proteins, when they're in their natural shape, they're much easier to deal with within our digestive system. You know, we don't have a lot of protein content. You know, fruits and vegetables are lower in proteins, so they're not going to be as affected compared to a higher protein food like a nut or a seed or even animal products, which, you know, we don't recommend at all because they're the worst of the worst, all of the animal products. But, you know, some of the foods that when they're cooked, are they necessarily incredibly bad for you? I wouldn't say that they're terrible. We can't eat them. But with that said, it depends on what your purpose is. I mean, are you trying to cleanse the body? Are you trying to heal from some sort of chronic issue that you want your body to really, you know, heal from? I would say stay away from the cooked foods. If you're trying to heal your body, cooked foods are not going to help you at all. You need to stick with the fruits, the berries, and the melons in their raw, uncooked, organic state, and that's going to be ideal. So if you're not trying to heal from anything and you're already pretty healthy, you can have cooked foods in small quantities. Even when you're doing a slower detox, let's just say you want to cleanse, you know, having a dinner meal of like a baked sweet potato or some soup, some vegetable soup, no cooked tomatoes though, they're kind of acidic. Tomatoes in their raw state, okay. But I would, you know, that's okay. It's fine to have a little bit of cooked food. They're just not as detoxifying or healing as fruits and vegetables. Jennifer writes, could I do A&P and ISOD at the same time, or would it be too confusing? You can do them in any order that you want to. I think, you know, with A&P, and for those of you just joining, I fell this morning, so my head's kind of hurting and my neck hurts, which I just went over how to use peppermint oil to help alleviate head pain. But coming back to your question, A&P and ISOD simultaneously. Yes, you can do them simultaneously. You know, anatomy and physiology, to really learn it, you need to have time for it. So, you know, since I teach at a traditional college, and right now at the college I'm teaching at, we do a semester system. So there's 16 weeks to a semester. So A&P 1 is done in 16 weeks, and then A&P 2 is done in 16 weeks. So in 32 weeks, you're getting the whole year of A&P. And my students, they meet on campus with me 5 hours a week. And I would recommend that they study 15 to 20 hours outside of that. So that's almost 30 hours a week if they want to really learn the material that they're dedicating to anatomy and physiology. Now, my online A&P course, right now, I don't have a time limit. I might change that because I was just discussing this earlier with my partner, whether or not it's a good idea to just let people do this as long as they want to. I mean, there's that freedom aspect I like of letting people do this at their own pace. But am I setting them up for failure if I do that? Because people kind of start to fall off the wagon and are not really treating it as a serious subject, because you need time, you need focus, and you need to be able to, go over this material again and again. So, but I think with ISOD, the beautiful thing is that's how Dr. Morse does it with his video program. Obviously, if you come to the live event, you're learning all of that material in an intensive 1-week program, and then you go home and you take the test. So you can do it at the same time. If you're doing the live program, it might be good to do A&P beforehand, or even doing it before ISOD 2. I'm hoping maybe you to talk to Dr. Morse a little bit more about what he recommends, how he would like to see a student that's really serious about learning about the human body, what type of sequence that he would suggest. I, don't really have one preference or the other, but I do think that if you're going into any natural healing modality, it's good to have an idea what the human body does. It's good to understand the basics of chemistry, and that's what you learn in ISOD. So if you're having that first, and then you go into ISOD, I think you'll understand, especially what Dr. Morse talks about at ISOD. So like level 1 in April, Dr. Morse usually comes in with the course talking a little bit about chemistry, the acid-base balance, and just basically the molecular aspect of life. And then we could progress from there into, the cellular level, and then to organs, tissues, organs, and then organ systems. And so that's where I'll be kind of picking it up as we get more into the human body. But I think it's good to have that A&P prior to going into ISOD, actually, because, that's what I would recommend. But like I said last week, you don't necessarily have to have A&P beforehand. You can take A&P anytime, and it will benefit you. I mean, even if you've gone through level 1 and level 2 ISOD and you want to kind of come back and really spend some time focusing on just how the human body works, that's fine too. I don't think I have any other questions right now. It's still not 7, and I advertised my session starting at 7, so I'm going to wait a few more minutes. But any other questions out there as I massage my head? And I'm getting those neurolymphatic points in the upper part of my neck. So those of you that are just coming in now, I fell and I got a major ouchie on the back of my head, and I banged my head when I fell backwards, and I've been kind of in pain the last few hours because there's a lot of ice outside. But good head massages, neck massages do wonders. All right. But yeah, I was mentioning before that, I'm just going to stick around for a few more minutes. I was mentioning before that about fructose. So fructose does not require insulin, glucose does. Again, the modern medical textbooks suggest all of the fructose goes to the liver where it's converted into glucose. Dr. Morse disagrees with that, and also to back up Dr. Morse, there's evidence that fructose can enter any cell without insulin. So, there's just so much research that ignores a lot of the basics. And I always kind of wonder, why is that? Why is it that, in allopathy, that they come up with an idea and then that idea just becomes ingrained as this is the way it is, there's no other alternative. And so when people like Dr. Morse start to come up with an alternative to what's currently in the modern medical books, everybody's kind of getting upset about it or questioning him. And he's just coming to it from what I consider common sense, which is just basic consciousness. He's just looking at how the body works, having worked with people for over 45 years, he comes up with his own idea, especially really seeing the lymphatic system and all of these lymphatic problems, which is his kind of focus. So many naturopaths in the past, like Dr. Schultz, Dr. Christopher, even going way, way back, they've always focused on the bowels, and they've always correlated a clean bowel with a clean body. And, there's a lot to be said for that. Having impacted bowels is really going to lymphatically congest the bowel wall. That's a major route of elimination. So you're really setting yourself up with that. But if you have weak kidneys and stagnant lymph, I think you're even in a worse state. So cleansing everything is important, not just the bowels, but getting the kidneys on board, getting the skin on board, getting the lungs on board. It's all so important. And whatever we can do to open up those channels of elimination, that's going to help us release the congestion, release it. All right, we're almost at 7. And there's so much I want to talk about the human body and anatomy and physiology. I am going to be doing a presentation, though, at Level 1 ISOD. So those of you that are signed up for ISOD Level 1, I will see you all there. I'm really excited about that. But the kidneys, they're very interesting organs. Their circulatory system is very unique. And this is something that sets the kidneys apart from all other organs. Having worked with Dr. Morse and having studied the kidneys in more detail ever since I, became knowledgeable who Dr. Morse was, and ever since he taught me this idea that the kidneys cleanse the lymph from the body, and I've done more and more research into that. I start to take what I know about the kidneys and connect it to this theory that the kidneys filter the lymph. I mean, it's one thing we can say as detoxification specialists, which is true. The kidneys filter out internal waste products. So from our internal bodily fluids, which include 2, the lymph and the blood, the kidneys are the main route out. Allopathy is stating that the lymph is dumped into the blood. Hi, Deborah, how are you doing? But in allopathic medicine, it's stated that the lymph is dumped into the blood, and then from those waste products dumped into the blood, later they get to the kidneys. And I'd like to share with you how they get to the kidneys. So what do my modern medical textbooks, where do they show that the lymph is dumping into the blood? It's right here, okay, right under the clavicles, into the subclavian veins. Now, the subclavian veins drain into the brachiocephalic veins, which drain into the superior vena cava. The superior vena cava then empties into the right atrium of the heart. That goes down to the right ventricle. The right ventricle pumps that blood out, and then that blood travels to the lungs. Okay, look at the route that this blood is taking, this lymphatic waste through. So then it's going to the lungs, where we pick up some oxygen. And then from the lungs, we go back to the heart again. We're now in the pulmonary circuit. We go back to the heart again, into the left atrium, and then the left ventricle. And then from the left ventricle, we're pumping that blood throughout the entire body in the systemic circulation. So we go out through the aorta, and that branches all over the place, right? Now, through that arterial blood, some of it's going to go to the kidneys. Now, the kidneys, as far as our cardiac output is concerned, they do get a lot of blood flow. They get about 25%, I think, of our cardiac output, which is simply the amount of blood our heart is pumping every minute. So the kidneys are getting a lot of blood. And, off of the abdominal aorta, there are 2 little renal arteries that are sending that blood to the kidneys. And it's from this fluid alone that allopathy is stating this is where all of the wastes are filtered. So you saw that whole route of blood flow that we had to go through. If we were going straight to the kidneys, it would be, again, subclavian veins, which are deoxygenated. That's where the blood is deoxygenated. So subclavian veins down to the brachiocephalic veins, which both empty into the superior vena cava, then to the right atrium of the heart, right ventricle of the heart, pumping that out to the pulmonary circuit through the pulmonary trunk to the lungs. In the lungs, we pick up oxygen. Now we're sending that oxygen-rich blood back to the heart into the left atrium, down into the left ventricle. We pump it out through the aorta in the systemic circuit, and then, goes up the aorta, through the aortic arch, all the way down into the abdominal aorta after it pierces the diaphragm, and then to the kidneys. That's the suggested route. And that's what everybody's been happy with. They're like, oh yeah, that sounds like a good idea. We'll stick with that. That seems pretty good. Meanwhile, the blood is carrying all of this time, all of those waste products that the lymphatic system had dumped into it. Now let's just kind of step back a little bit. The lymphatic system, what is it doing? It's taking up excess fluid away from our tissue spaces. So we have, our tissues, which are made up of cells. And as Dr. Morris teaches, we have two major fluids passing through these cells. We have the blood circulation, which is moving rather quickly, a little faster. And then we have these lymphatic capillaries. So the blood actually releases more than it picks back up. So, the blood is releasing nutrients and oxygen to the cells and picking up carbon dioxide and some other fluids, a couple of wastes. But most of it is staying in the tissue spaces, which then has to be picked up by the lymphatic system. If there's anything abnormal in the tissue spaces, like abnormal cells or abnormal pathogens, which, I don't like to say the word pathogen because a lot of the bacteria that are there simply because the culturing medium has invited them. Keep that in mind. Bacteria do not cause the issue. They are there to benefit from the issue, which is lymphatic congestion, right? So that congestion needs to be taken up by the lymphatic system, right? So this is what the lymphatic system is ultimately dumping right here, according to allopathy, into those subclavian veins. And then all of that waste is going through our blood circulation. It just seems like a route that is really, it's like, taking the really long scenic route and you're carrying toxic waste material. It's kind of like if you're carrying something toxic, you'd want to take it right to the facility where you can process it and get rid of it. You don't want to be carrying that around with you too long because everywhere it goes, and especially if it's carrying a lot of, acidic waste or dead cells, pathogenic material, you kind of think you want to get it to the kidneys right away. So I think what we need to do, and this is where I would hope other people in the medical community or the science community, anybody out there that can help us, that are out there researching this, that are in scientific labs where they're looking at kidney tissue, they're looking at the lymphatic vessels in these organs. We need more information to show the directional flow of lymph, to show where it's going. I still have yet to find a research article in a living system that shows that the route of lymph is into those subclavian veins. I just can't find it. And, historically, the lymphatic system, I think a lot of the first research is just a little over 100 years old. So there's not a lot out there right now. And I know there are lymphologists out there, but still they're following this kind of modern medical paradigm of how the lymph flows. So it's all kind of crazy. Jennifer has chimed in. Let's see if my mouse is working. All right. Jennifer says, I really value your research and teachings, and I'm glad I have found you and Dr. Morris. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jennifer, so much. I found Dr. Morris when I became a raw vegan, I think in 2010, and I am grateful too that I came across him. It's so refreshing because, I was a vegan and then I became a raw vegan. And when I became a raw vegan, I was learning more about cleansing and detoxifying. I ran into Dan the Man, which a lot of you may or may not be familiar with. He was the guy that was out in his van doing juicing videos. And then he started talking about Dr. Morris. I'm like, who is this guy? And then I started watching his videos and I was just like, wow. He simplistically puts it all together. and he's healing people, which is something that in allopathy is not really seen. In allopathy, you get repeat customers that never really get healed. They become functionally capable. I like to call allopathy not a system of health, but it's a system of disease maintenance. Diseases belong to allopathy. So you're never gonna, you guys can see how I have my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle pants on. When I do these videos, I just kind of make sure that I have an appropriate shirt on. That I'm wearing pajama bottoms right now because I've been kind of letting my little head heal. So anyway, but before I get too off track, in allopathy, they practice disease maintenance. So first of all, allopathy, that's where you go to become diagnosed with a disease, because naturopaths, true naturopaths, we don't diagnose anything. We are just simply here, Dr. Morse, myself, Marcy, Attila, who work at Dr. Morse's office, and all of the other wonderful detoxification specialists that, when I go to the ISOD forums, I'm seeing the healing that's done there. It's just amazing, and I'm so grateful to be part of this amazing group of healers. That's where the healing's taking place. So in allopathy, is healing taking place? I know that money's being made, pharmaceutical drugs are being sold, procedures that I would question are taking place, procedures that could possibly put people at risk. I'm not here to tell people what to do. And if people are watching this video, even after this recording's over, and you're watching this, I am not telling people to do one thing or the other. All I'm simply saying is that there is an alternative. And I don't even like to put our field in alternative medicine. We are the main healing medicine that has been on this planet for thousands of years. Herbs and diet have been written about in the scriptures. I mean, they're just biblically, historically, this is the field that heals, not this system of drug medicine, which, the Rockefellers came up with and basically wiped out all of the other healing systems. I mean, read the Flexner report. The Flexner report is where the Rockefellers came in, decided, well, we've got all of these, chemicals we need to sell. How do we make this profitable? And I think a lot of the drugs at the time were just basically byproducts of the oil industry. And so to profit off of that, instead of, because it costs too much because of environmental policies to dump that into the ocean. So how can I profit off of this waste and sell it and help to benefit me? And what did they do? They came up with a system of allopathy where symptoms are suppressed, nothing's really healed, that mechanism of the body, telling you something's wrong is suppressed, and that just keeps the disease going on and on and on. And we learn how to mitigate these symptoms of this disease that the allopaths diagnose, but it's never eradicated. And that's where I had a problem with. And that's why I decided not to practice medicine. It's just a system that's crazy, right? So Jennifer, thank you for joining us all. And, I hope that you're going to be going into ISOD or learning all of this and take that knowledge and just really help heal this planet, help to heal the life on this planet. Serenia, again, I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Should all people be on a high fruit diet or only if trying to heal the body from a condition? Well, fruit is our main food source as humans. Humans are biologically frugivores, meaning that we thrive on a diet high in fruit and green leafy vegetables. That's the diet that humans are biologically adapted to. We have color vision to see when fruit is at its ripest state, and that's when we know it's safe to eat, or not safe to eat, it's always safe to eat, but that's when we know it's at its sweetest, amount of glucose or fructose content, and it's going to taste the best. So we have that color vision for a reason. We have hands that can pick fruit from a tree. We can climb trees to get to the fruit. So just biologically, our body is meant to eat fruit. I mean, These little teeth, the canines, they're not meant for biting into an animal. They're not meant for, doing those types of activities. They're meant for eating fruit. So when we eat the food we're biologically made to eat, we do the best. And what Dr. Morris and many other healers have found is that these diets that we're meant to eat are also healing for us. So they keep us healthy, but they also help to heal us because they remove the lymphatic congestion. So, right now humans are so amazing. We come up with all of these amazing meals. I mean, I've been a vegan for over 10 years. And when I first became a vegan, there was hardly anything out there. And I was eating a lot of, just basically fruits and vegetables in their raw state because that was it. But now all of these amazing vegan chefs have created all of these different fancy recipes. And so sometimes those are fun, but fruits are going to heal you. That's really what it comes down to. And Serena, I am all fruit and herbs for multiple sclerosis. Oh, okay, Jennifer. Yeah, the Ninja Turtles, they're great. But yeah, for neurological disorders, anything neurological, fruit is so electrically activating. And you have to think of what the nervous system does. So the nervous system is transmitting electrical signals. What is this electricity that's being transmitted through the brain, the spinal cord, and all of the peripheral nerves? It's basically electrolytes that come from that mineral-rich fruit, the minerals that are dissolved in the plant life, in the fruits and vegetables. It's high electricity. And so when you're taking that in, you're going to be able to allow the nervous system to function best, to heal best, to detoxify best. It's a great diet, and people do come back to life. They regain function, which is unheard of in allopathy. Allopathy, basically, they like to put little time stamps on you, like this is how much time you have left, because they don't prescribe these types of diets. They prescribe things that can be purchased at the pharmacy. All we're saying is that the high energy, high electricity fruit is the one that heals. That's really what's going to be helping people detoxify and giving that electrical energy for healing as well. I mean, when we activate the nervous system during detoxification, we're turning on this system within us that is creating this vibrant energy and helping to, I don't want to say stimulate, but it helps to kind of bring about the natural function of all of our organs. That's what the fruit's doing. So it just all around is the perfect food for a lot of life on this planet. Like my dogs, they get kind of a rotational diet, but they're getting food in their raw state, and I do give them fruit. My dogs do get some cut up apples, some berries. I'll give them in the summertime when melons are really abundant. They love watermelon and honeydew melon. They're not getting as much fruit as I would. So my dogs do get other foods in addition to that, but they're omnivores. And my cats are obligate carnivores. So their diet is radically different from mine. But biologically, they are also adept to other types of foods. I mean, dogs don't have the same color vision as we do. They can't see the full spectrum of visible light, whereas, as humans, we can. So that, me wearing my little rainbow shirt today, I can see all of these colors. The reds, where am I? The reds to the purples. I can't see infrared. Infrared is a inferior wavelength or a longer wavelength, and then ultraviolet. I can't see that, but there are other animals, like I think certain snakes can see in that spectrum of light. So, what kind of receptors do we have biologically? What can we do? There's just so many things pointing to the fact that we should be eating a diet rich in fruit, berries, and melons. So that's ideal. All right, any other questions? For those of you that kind of joined late, I mentioned this earlier in the video, but I fell today and I hit the back of my head and I have a major ouchie and my neck is kind of sore and I've had this headache and I didn't want to cancel tonight's Q&A But I know I can't stay as late as I've done in previous weeks. I think I saw it was interesting when after I fell today, I was kind of sitting there with an ice pack. I was doing some hot cold therapy, and I saw a post on Facebook that said trauma, and how people recover from a trauma has a lot to do with their lifestyle. Not everybody is going to respond to trauma in the same way. For me personally, I kind of got up and I was kind of surprised because I fell pretty bad. It was pure ice on my landing, and my concrete landing, and my feet fell from underneath me and I just fell. And I fell, 3 years ago when I was rock climbing, and my ankle just bent in a weird position. And how I recovered from that, I think, has to do with the fact that I try to limit my ingestion of these mucus-forming, congesting foods that don't break down completely, that become impacted on the bowel wall, that aren't absorbed. So I don't get that stuff in my body, and that means less congestion, less inflammation, and healing takes place a lot faster. So a person that's eating a diet that's full of congestion and who is lymphatically built up with all of this nonsense, they're going to be sore a lot longer, because that's all this ache is. It's just these inflammatory, I don't want to say inflammatory, but these acids that build up in the tissue spaces, and then that burns on the cells, and then that's what you're feeling as the soreness. So, I'm sure I have a lot of congestion right here. And even though I'm vegan, I don't eat 100% fruit right now, but when I'm doing a cleanse, I do. When I'm doing a cleanse, I'll do nothing but fruit, or I'll do some fruit juices, but, So any other questions before I call it a night? Any other questions? All right, so without further ado, I'm going to make tonight's Q&A a little bit shorter. I apologize. I've been on for about an hour, and I think I am going to be, for future reference, I'm going to be changing the time we meet. I think right now I'm meeting at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that's just a little late. I teach on Monday mornings, so I want to make sure that I'm not up too late, because if we get into a nice conversation, especially as I start to add more material that I want to share with all of you. See, I've got all this congestion right here, and it's starting to drain, I think. It's all got to come out through the kidneys, really. But I'm sure there was some trauma when I hit my head, and with trauma, you get a little bit of swelling, and then it causes a backup, and that's what needs to be released. But I want some of these sessions to go longer if needed. So I think if I start a little bit earlier in the day, that would be a lot better. I know those of you on the East Coast, starting at 8 is kind of late. It might not be affecting those of you on the West Coast, though. Let me just check to see if there are any other questions. Thank you, Jennifer. I will do my best to feel better. Just doing the same thing that I would recommend to my clients that have headaches, hot cold therapy, and unfortunately I'm out of the pain formula, but I should keep that on hand at all times. Okay, I'm going to call it a night. I hope you all have a beautiful night as well, and I will be back next week. Bye.